The way we watch live theatre is changing. In the last few years, services such as Digital Theatre and National Theatre Live have revolutionised the way in which theatre reaches a mass audience. While Shakespeare's plays have been captured on film for over 100 years, it's only now that live theatrical productions are being made digitally available to everyone in cinema presentations across the UK and even to watch online at home. But how does this change the relationship between actor and audience? Are we, the viewers at home or in the cinema, detached from the experience while a live audience is involved? Are we watching a piece of theatre or a piece of film? Or is this a completely different new hybrid form? In this film, we'll be taking a specific example, a comedic soliloquy from The Merchant of Venice, and looking closely at the vastly different cinematic approaches achievable when cameras are introduced to a piece of live Shakespeare. The transference of Shakespeare from stage to film is nothing new. In 1899, a short and simple shot of Sir Herbert Beerbohm-Tree's stage production of King John became the first ever piece of Shakespearean drama to be captured on film. It was followed by countless others throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, each cinematic in their own way, making full use of the various resources available in film that are simply not achievable in theatre.
Or not to be.
But then, in 1964, something new happened.
The gentleman at my side is about to have an experience that no other actor ever had before. He's going to have a chance to see himself perform on the Broadway stage.
Advances in broadcasting technology meant that there had been a surge in as-live cinematic screenings. The process of electronovision began replacing reels of film with high-resolution videotape. Sporting events, particularly boxing, were being sent to movie theatres across the USA, allowing viewers to enjoy the game as live whilst experiencing the atmosphere of being amongst other fans. In 1964, Richard Burton stepped onto the Broadway stage as Hamlet, and the performance was recorded by electronovision.
We know that movies are something you see on the screen, and plays are something you see live on the stage. What is theatrofilm with electronovision?
To a layman like myself, it seems to be like a very well-produced film, as one normally sees it in the theatre, except in the cinema, except that this, of course, is shot in the Lunt-Fontanne Theatre with an actual live audience and with the actors performing and either being adept or inadequate or good or fluffing or being articulate, just as they would if you went to see a production tonight at the Lunt-Fontanne Theatre.
Despite the bold advertising, Burton shows a fascinating uncertainty about the new form. Nobody really knows how it's going to work and how the audience are going to receive it.
Of course, this is very much experimental, this one, and we don't quite know how well it will succeed or whether people will be interested in seeing it. We think they will because the demand already has become quite considerable, I understand.
Richard Burton, the actor at ground zero when Hamlet exploded into the 20th century.
Be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing.
The performance was recorded over 3 nights by 17 cameras, and the edited version shown successfully at over 1,000 movie houses across the country on 2 consecutive evenings. In an attempt to mimic live theatre's effervescence, all copies of the recording were to be destroyed after its broadcast had concluded. This fact was widely advertised, enhancing the experiment's image of recreating a one-off theatrical experience. The copy we are watching was in fact only discovered amongst Burton's possessions following his death, and has subsequently been released internationally.
For in that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's a respect that makes calamity.
Despite the excitement surrounding the experiment of so-called theatrofilm, electronovision failed to revolutionise theatre as it had promised. the experiment was enormously expensive, costing Warner Brothers around $700,000. Just over half a dozen theatrical performances were captured as theatrofilm before the unsuccessful brand was scrapped. "50 years later, and the idea of bringing live theatre to screens around the country has returned. With recent advances in high-definition technology, the process of broadcasting live theatre on camera has no longer become the unaffordable, near-impossible challenge that Electronovision had pioneered. In 2006, New York's Metropolitan Opera began broadcasting live to cinemas around the US, and British theatre soon caught on to the idea.
NT Live was shamelessly ripped off, really, from the Metropolitan Opera in New York, who started 3 or 4 years ago broadcasting live to cinemas. There are places that we can get to with NT Live that we could never tour to even if we wanted to, because they don't have theatres. So yeah, we've greatly extended our reach, and there's no limit, it seems to me, to how far we can extend our reach. If your town has a cinema with the satellite equipment and the digital projectors, we can get there.
The cultural benefits certainly cannot be ignored. Theatre would no longer be seen as simply a privilege for those based in London who can afford the often expensive ticket prices.
I think that worldwide theatre has a reputation for sometimes being only for the privileged or only for the wealthy, but I think that isn't true, and I think it's particularly not true in the UK. The National was created for there to be a real home for the performing arts in Britain. It's the most democratic institution that you could imagine. It is for all the people. It enriches a culture. It enriches the country, on a national scale and on an international scale.
So in theory, the entire process seems like a very positive thing. The big question that still has not been resolved is, what exactly is theatre captured on screen? How should the actors adapt to it? Do they just play to the audience live in front of them, or can they play to the viewers watching on a screen, or somehow both? If so, how does this show itself in technique? When asked in 1964 about adapting his acting style for the cameras, Burton claimed that it would be no different from normal stage acting.
None of the actors make any concession to this new process. In other words, we don't tone it down in order to seem like film actors or play it up because the cameras are perhaps a little further away than they would be in a movie studio.
But despite these claims, it's impossible to deny the vast difference in hearing recorded speech captured through a microphone and hearing it live in an auditorium. I was particularly struck by the live broadcast of Rory Kinnear's Hamlet, that the close and intimate filmic qualities felt like an odd juxtaposition, given his vocal projection had to fill the Olivier.
And resolve itself into a dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon 'gainst self-slaughter.
Despite this, the subtlest of moments are incredibly effective in filmic close-up, such as Adrian Lester's tears as Othello. We get a very detailed view of emotion, unachievable in the rear seats at the National. It becomes clear that there are elements of both required from the actors. So just how far can the genre be played with? I decided to do an experiment. I took one actor, Jim Burrows, one comedic soliloquy, Lancelot Gobbo's clownish opening speech from The Merchant of Venice, and one studio audience, a collection of university students. There's no costume, no set, no theatrical lighting, just a black space and a single actor. Later on, I'll explore how this dual performance to a mass digital as well as live audience has been pioneered outside straight theatre, taking influence from television comedy, and how alternative camera techniques can be introduced in drama to enhance a theatrical experience. But first, we'll attempt to mimic the digital theatre cinematography, the use of both wide and close-up cameras as unseen onlookers among the audience. Phase 1. To begin with, Jim performs the monologue to the audience in the room, as if this were a normal piece of theatre, and we filmed it from the edges, the cameras out of the way.
Certainly, my conscience will serve me to run this Jew, my master. The fiend is at mine elbow and tempts me, saying to me, Gobbo, Lancelot Gobbo, good Lancelot, or good Gobbo, or good Lancelot Gobbo. Use your legs, take the start, run away. But my conscience says, No. Take heed, honest Lancelot, honest Gobbo, or, as Alfred said, honest Lancelot.
It's clear from the offset that the audience are incredibly engaged. Jim is able to use the space, making eye contact, even picking directly on one audience member to really milk the laughs for all they're worth.
Budge, not budge! Budge, not budge! Budge, not budge! I will run, fiend! Away! I will run!
But what if the audience in the auditorium are no longer the priority? In broadcast comedy, especially in the US, comedians open their chat shows with a series of satirical monologues. They're usually scripted by a team of writers and performed down the lens of a camera in front of a live audience. Could this influence work as a technique when tackling comedy written by Shakespeare? While actors in digital theatre broadcasts supposedly ignore that the cameras are there, what if Jim were to actually deliver his speech down the lens of the camera? That brings us to Phase 2. We repeat the same extract again, this time with the main camera placed in front of the audience and Jim directed to perform as much as possible down the lens.
Away! Says the fiend. For the heavens, rouse up a brave mind, says the fiend, and run! Well, my conscience, hanging around the neck of my heart, says very wisely to me, my honest friend Lancelot, son of an honest man, or son of an honest woman, in any case, for my father. Well, he did something smack, something grotesque. He was keen on...
Despite breaking theatrical conventions, it still works as a piece of comedy. But we can go even further with this. Let's introduce another element. A style often seen in modern television comedy, especially by comedians such as Stuart Lee and Harry Hill, is the use of a second side-facing camera.
I'm wondering whether he might benefit from some sort of wet wipe.
The technique breaks the conventions of live performance, but engages both the audience at home and the audience in the studio or theatre, who quickly accept the new convention.
I'm doing that joke here, but of course the danger is it's been broadcast now, and maybe Asher D or a member of the So Solid crew has seen that, and if you are Asher D or a member of the So Solid crew watching tonight, then yes, I am disrespecting you.
It enables the performer to give a knowing look down a second lens, treating the camera as complicit with them and separate from the audience in the room and the primary lens. It's almost like introducing a fifth wall to be broken. Phase 3, the side-on camera. We placed a side-facing camera on stage right, allowing Jim to change where his lines are delivered, especially effective during scenes of internal conflict.
The most courageous fiend bids me pack. Ha! Says the fiend. Away! Says the fiend. From the heavens, rouse up a brave mind, says the fiend. Away! My conscience says, Lancelot, budge not. But the fiend says, budge. My conscience says, budge not. The fiend says, budge. Budge not, budge. Budge not, budge.
It also enabled him to give those subtextual knowing looks down the lens, creating a sense of intimacy and involvement that goes beyond performance to just one audience.
Friend Lancelot, being an honest man's son, or in any case, an honest woman's son, my father did something smack, something go to. He was very keen on it. Well,
Phase 4, the selfie. Finally, we go all out and give Jim the camera to do his own thing, playing on the recent trend of the selfie.
The most courageous fiend bids me pack. Ah! Says the fiend. Away! Says the fiend.
I didn't mean
From the heavens, rouse up a brave mind.
See, every time.
Well, my conscience, hanging round the neck of my heart, says to me, my honest friend Lancelot, being an honest man's son, or, you know, an honest woman's son, for indeed my father did something smart, something broke too, something he's got a keen eye for.
The results are simply hilarious. Jim is able to play to the two audiences, but at the same time be totally in control of one of them. The ridiculous shot of a ridiculous monologue is very effective, demonstrating just how unconventional camera work can add to a performance. And then, we did it all over again. Phase 5, take away the audience. The lack of laughter means the speech has sped up noticeably, but a lot of the energy has disappeared. Whether it's to himself...
Budge not, but the fiend said budge not, budge not, budge not, budge!
Down the lens...
Take heed, good Garbo, good Lancelot Garbo, honest Lancelot Garbo.
Even as a selfie.
Well, the most courageous fiend bids me pack. Ha! Says the fiend.
It has never reached anywhere near the peak of comedy that was achievable with a responsive audience.
Says the fiend.
In this respect, it's difficult to imagine watching a piece of digital theatre online, whether on a laptop or a smartphone, living up to the experience of being among an audience. Perhaps in a cinema, however, surrounded by like-minded people, there will be more of a comedic effect. It will lack that personal touch that's possible when you're in the room, though. The subtextual connection between actor and audience that prompts some truly unmatched moments of spontaneous comedy. From something as simple as an extended silence, the actor can tailor his comic timing to the audience.
Take the start or run away! But my conscience says... But my conscience says...
So, to conclude, yes, this is a new hybrid form, but the majesty and emotional power of the source material will always be strong enough to carry the audience, whether in a cinema or the auditorium of the theatre. Full enough cinema audiences will always have a collective response to what they're seeing, as anyone who sees comedy films in a packed cinema will know. That said, I am sceptical about the effectiveness of watching a pre-recorded production while sat alone at home via the internet. It feels neither live nor atmospheric, and more as though we're watching a resource purely for cataloguing purposes. While the mid-20th century attempts to pioneer theatrofilm as a genre failed monumentally, I predict a great deal more success for this surge in digital theatre. The challenge for the actors and directors is to understand how to relate to both the live audience and the cameras, and the extent to which the full blast of a live theatrical performance has to be modified for a cinema broadcast. No matter how hard an actor were to try, a performance to 1,000 people and a performance to 100,000 people simply cannot and will not be the same.